Sara's death has prompted national outrage and calls for a tightening of the rules on who is allowed to home educate their children. Now, under government plans, there'll be new registers of children not in school, and local authorities could insist that children at risk of abuse attend.
I do the data every year and find the numbers of children who've fallen off school rolls and disappear. This register will mean we know where they are and we can check on them.
This would be a set if there was a hollow 3 squiggly.
Yep. It says record numbers of children are being homeschooled in England, over 150,000 during the last academic year, including Calvin, whose mother says many parents feel they're left with no choice.
The reason home education is so valuable is it's an escape valve for the children failed by the education system. So many children in home education groups now are there because they've come out of schools, they've got unmet SEN needs.
But it's in classrooms where the first signs of abuse and neglect can be picked up by teachers trained to notice.
We often get confused because school's about education, about teaching children to read, write and count. However, our primary role is to keep children safe, and we have a key role in being the front line in terms of safeguarding our children.
So for children who are at risk, do you think school's the safest place?
The children who are at risk, I think there needs to be proper checks and balances.
The new plan only applies to parents of children known to be vulnerable to abuse. They'll lose their automatic right to homeschool. Instead, they'll have to get permission from their local authority, not the outright ban some had been calling for. Giving councils the final say leaves open the risk that children will still fall through the net. In many cases, when children have come to harm, wrong decisions made by overstretched local authorities have been blamed for the terrible consequences that followed. As Sara Sharif's murderers begin lengthy prison sentences, fears remain she won't be the last child to be failed by the authorities, whose job it is to keep children safe. Becky Johnson, Sky News.
Well, our correspondent Saba Chowdhury has been following the trial and even received a video from Sara's father and stepmother, which was used as evidence. You join me now, Saba. Quite extraordinary hearing the judge lay out the abuse of Sara so clearly today in court. What was the reaction then from the courtroom?
Good evening, Anna. Well, Mr. Justice Kavanagh, in his sentencing remarks, described the campaign of abuse Sara faced as torture. This is a child, a 10-year-old girl, who in the weeks and days leading up to her death was battered with a cricket bat and a metal pole. She had an iron to her buttocks. She was restrained with masking tape, was hooded, was strangled, was bitten. This was all before her eventual murder. And so Judge Kavanagh today decided to sentence Sara's father, Sara Sharif, to a minimum term of 40 years in jail for his daughter's murder. Her stepmother, Binish Batul, Sara's primary carer, was given a minimum term of 33 years in prison for murder. Meanwhile, Sara's uncle, who was acquitted of murder but was given 16 years for causing or allowing Sara's death. Now, her mother, Olga Demin, in a victim impact statement that was read out today in court, had this direct message for the defendants. She said, "You are sadists. Although even this word is not enough for you, I would say you are executioners." So some really, really powerful words there. And now that the trial is over, Anna, there are some serious questions for the authorities, particularly because the Sharif family, Sara's case in particular, were known to the police, known to social services, yet this child was still put in a position which led to her eventual murder. And so an inquest and a local safeguarding review is due to look into this in the coming year.
Saba, thank you. Today, a highly ranked Russian military official was killed by an explosion in Moscow. The head of the Nuclear, Biological, Chemical Defence Forces was outside a residential building when a device hidden in a scooter was detonated remotely. Claiming responsibility, sources in Kyiv described Igor Kirillov as a war criminal and a legitimate target. Sky's Moscow correspondent Ivor Bennett reports.
It didn't look like there was any danger when Igor Kirillov and his assistant left his Moscow apartment block. But hidden behind a lamppost, circled in red, was a bomb. And within seconds of leaving, both men were dead. Shattered glass, all that was left of this car windscreen. The bomb was concealed in an electric scooter and was reportedly the work of Ukraine's security service. Kirillov was a top Russian general. His assassination here, not even 5 miles from the Kremlin, brings the war much closer to home for those living nearby.
I thought this was it. War has started. Drones.
The building was shaking and I live on the 23rd floor. I didn't even look out the window because it was so scary.
Lieutenant General Kirillov was in charge of Russia's nuclear, chemical and biological protection forces, the ones deployed in conditions of contamination. Ukraine's accused him of using chemical weapons on the battlefield. Russia denies the allegation, but the UK believes it too and appeared to welcome his death.
Yeah, make no mistake, this was a bad man, and he has a proven and admitted record of using chemical weapons against troops on the battlefield. And it was for that reason that as a government in October we sanctioned him and his unit, because they were breaking international law.
There's been a string of similar attacks in Russia since the start of the war, which Moscow's blamed on Kyiv. Among them, the killing of Daria Dugina, the daughter of ultra-nationalist ideologue Alexander Dugin, in 2022. But Kirillov is the most high-profile of them all. The fact this has happened so far from the battlefield and so close to the centre of Moscow will be hugely embarrassing for Vladimir Putin, because it's another reminder that despite all his talk of Russia being in control of the war, things still aren't always going to plan. Russia's investigative committee has classified the attack as an act of terrorism, and the Kremlin will undoubtedly respond. Ivor Bennett, Sky News, Moscow.
Well, the security risk posed by the killing of the general will most certainly concern the Kremlin. Our defence and security analyst Michael Clark has been looking at the frequency of these attacks and what it means for the war in Ukraine.
The apparent assassination of General Kirillov is the most significant since the war began, and it happened just 4 miles from the Kremlin. But it's not the first time. In July, a Moscow car bomb targeted a military intelligence GRU officer and his wife, severely injuring them both. Russia blamed Ukraine, probably rightly. And last year, a pro-war military blogger, Vladlen Tatarsky, was killed in the cafe bombing in the centre of St. Petersburg. The first such attack like this since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine was also a car bomb, killing Daria Dugina in August 2022, just west of Moscow. She was the daughter of the ultra-nationalist Putin ally, Alexander Dugin. Now, Ukraine denies that it carried it out, but Moscow blamed them, and the Western allies reportedly said that they believed that Ukraine had ordered the attack. What makes Kirillov's assassination so significant is what it tells us about the way the war is going and where it might go in the coming months. Kirillov was in charge of CBN, chemical, biological, nuclear, by which we mean radiological, and he was in charge of the protection of Russian troops from those elements, chemical, biological, radiological. But his role went far beyond that. His actual behaviour was that he was involved in the planning of chemical warfare in Syria, and he's had a great deal to do, and that's what the British government think, with chemical warfare all the way around the front in Ukraine. The K-51 gas grenade, a grenade that carries CS gas, but in some cases in lethal concentrations, is ubiquitous all along the front. It's used all the time. And there have been traces of sarin and cyanide in a number of chemical attacks. The Ukrainians have said that about 5,000 attacks have taken place. Western analysts say that might be a slight exaggeration, but the number is more or less credible. And the reason that this matters now is because of what is going to happen on the 20th of January, the inauguration of President Trump, because we all believe that the political dynamics behind the war will begin to alter after the inauguration of the new president. And so both sides, both Russia and Ukraine, are pushing as hard as they possibly can for every ounce of military dominance before Trump takes over. And what the Ukrainians are doing, they're sending a message, not just to the Russians, but to the rest of the world, that we are fighting for our lives and we'll do whatever it takes. And if assassinations, which technically are terrorist, if that's what it takes, that's what we will do. That's the message to the incoming president.
To Syria now, where the Israeli Prime Minister visited newly seized territory today and insisted that his soldiers would remain there to prevent jihadist groups from exploiting the situation. Well, our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle joins us now. So why did he need to go, Alistair, into Syria? What message will he have wanted to send?
Well, it's the first time that an Israeli Prime Minister has been in Syrian territory for many decades. It's the first time that Benjamin Netanyahu has been there for more than 50 years. He was last there as a special forces commando in the Israeli military. He went there today because ever since the downfall of President Bashar al-Assad and his departure to Moscow, of course, Syria has been in something of a flux. There is no confirmed government there, and security within Syria is uncertain. And so Israeli forces pushed into the buffer zone between the two countries at the orders of Netanyahu, and he's been to visit those forces today. And he says that Israeli forces will remain there until the situation in Syria becomes clearer. So Israel finding another front effectively opening up on its borders. When it comes to Gaza, a war that's been fighting for more than 14 months now, there is optimism that progress is being made in ceasefire talks. There was some rumours around this evening that Netanyahu was flying to Cairo for emergency talks. Those don't appear to be true. But there is real hope that the sides are coming closer, that a deal could be done, if not in the coming hours, then in the coming days and weeks, and that Hamas is softening some of its positions. Fissures still remain between the two sides, but they do seem to be getting closer.
Alistair, with that update, thank you. The Work and Pensions Secretary, Liz Kendall, has announced that women affected by changes to the state pension age will not receive compensation. The so-called WASPy women, who were born in the 1950s, say they weren't given enough notice about the age rise 30 years ago. Well, our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, joins us now. And Sam, it was a significant age change for these women and criticism already for this government decision.
That's right, Anna. There is a big backlash inside Keir Starmer's Labour Party tonight at the decision not to compensate the so-called WASPy women, those born in the 1950s who were not adequately warned that the state pension age was rising. Now, on its own terms, interestingly, I think the government thinks that they've got a pretty strong case. They were not legally obliged to tell these women what was happening beyond the publicity it got in the papers and on TV and so on. And the cost of compensation, well, at over £10 billion, they simply argue there isn't the money to do this. However, the reason for the backlash is that as recently as 2019, the Labour Party has taken the opposite view and promised to compensate. Keir Starmer himself was promising compensation in 2022, or certainly hinting that that might come. And there are embarrassing photos of Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, and Liz Kendall, the Work and Pension Secretary, who's making today's announcement, holding placards promising to compensate those women. All of this has amounted to an unhappy group of MPs. They weren't expecting this announcement when it came today. They, in fact, were thinking there might be good news. There was an emergency meeting at 3 o'clock, and I think some of them think that more could be done to prepare them, and the position might have to change. One new Labour MP said, "It feels a bit like we assembled this enormous coalition at the election, and now we're just intent on taking an axe to it piece by piece." There could be a vote in the new year where Labour MPs rebel. It's not a happy party going into Christmas.
Interesting. Sam Coates down in Downing Street. Thank you. There are fears of disease spreading and a shortage of food in Mayotte after Cyclone Chido. The storm was the strongest to hit the island in 90 years. It blew through the Indian Ocean, also battering nearby Madagascar and the Comoros Islands. Later, it made landfall in Mozambique on the African mainland. Malawi was also hit with heavy rain and strong winds. Well, French rescue efforts for Mayotte are being coordinated from the island of Réunion, where aid authorities are aiming to establish an air and sea bridge. Our correspondent, Ashish Joshi, reports from the city of Saint-Denis.
A bustling community just days ago, now shredded to splinters. This is the aftermath of Cyclone Chido. Mayotte has not faced a storm this fierce for over 90 years. Nothing was spared. Hundreds of miles away across the Indian Ocean, a huge aid effort is underway. It's being coordinated from this warehouse in Réunion's capital, Saint-Denis.
These are the kits that they're sending out to Mayotte at the moment. This is emergency shelter. It has everything that the people there can use to try and build some temporary accommodation until something more permanent is arranged. It has hand saws, measuring tapes, hammers, shears, and this is being shipped out on containers day by day.
Power on Mayotte is out and communication is patchy at best.
With the tools and the plastic sheeting, at least they can have a shelter, an emergency shelter for the next days.
The Red Cross has confirmed that some 200 workers dispatched to the island before the cyclone struck are still unaccounted for. The disaster relief effort is a logistical nightmare.
The telecommunications is very complicated. The information we get from the field are still very partial. And then the logistic is a huge challenge with the airport, which is not operational. Only military asset can go now. So there's not enough capacity in terms of logistics.
The shipping containers will take up to 4 days to reach Mayotte. So emergency supplies have to be flown in by the French military. 4 or 5 planes each day, carrying up to 50 tons of food, water and medicine.
The personnel, the gendarmes, the civil protection service, the military are all mobilised to reinforce the plan to send around 1,000 people to the area to help by Wednesday.
But that will be 4 days after the deadly cyclone. People in Mayotte will want to know why more help didn't arrive sooner. Ashish Joshi, Sky News, Réunion Island.
The former Archbishop of Canterbury, George Carey, has quit amid claims that he mishandled child abuse cases. Lord Carey is still technically a priest, but has given up his permission to officiate, meaning he will not function as a priest in future. In his resignation letter sent early this month, Lord Carey said it had been an honour to serve the church and thanked his wife, Eileen, for her outstanding support. Luigi Mangione, the man accused of killing United Healthcare's chief executive, has been charged with murder as an act of terrorism. Luigi Mangione has garnered lots of online attention, but speaking earlier, the New York Police Commissioner hit out at those who appeared to glorify his actions.
Since Mr. Thompson's killing, we have seen a shocking and appalling celebration of cold-blooded murder. Social media has erupted with praise for this cowardly attack.
Nigel Farage and Reform Party Treasurer Nick Candy have met Elon Musk at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. The Reform UK MP posted images on social media of himself, Mr Candy and Mr Musk. He said the special relationship is alive and well following the meeting. It comes amid reports Mr Musk is considering donating £78 million to Mr Farage's party. So it was the final day of the Post Office inquiry into the Horizon IT scandal today. But as we await the outcome of that, the government has promised a payout to those sub-postmasters prosecuted in cases involving the Capture software, that is the predecessor of Horizon. But it is refusing to rule out blanket exoneration for those convicted. Sky's Adele Robinson reports now and has been speaking to some of the victims.
My wife fought all her life. Until it has, until she died.
This is about a scandal before the scandal. Capture victims among the oldest to suffer at the hands of the Post Office.
Happy days.
Ken's wife June was sued after being accused of stealing in the 90s. Now the government's promised compensation for victims, but not automatic exoneration. What do you want to happen?
I want June to be exonerated. And I'll do my best until she is. I'll fight until the end.
How much does it mean to you?
The world. The world.
Capture software was used in the 90s before Horizon, which led to hundreds of wrongful convictions. Reports concluded it was likely Capture also created false accounts. Speaking exclusively to Sky News, the Post Office Minister said there was a responsibility to work fast.
Well, the first stage is to work with the Criminal Cases Review Commission. It's the reason why we've asked the Post Office to go through all its records to try and help us understand, firstly, how many people were affected in total by using capture software, and also to try and understand how many people were then convicted.
While the government's promised justice, those convicted aren't eligible for redress. And that's the challenge for the government, because the capture victims have been waiting even longer than the Post Office Horizon ones. Earlier this year, legislation was introduced to automatically quash Horizon convictions, but that was supposed to be a one-off. Behind the scenes, it's likely the judiciary will be pushing back.
Why does one group of people get legislative help to be exonerated and another doesn't, when it's the same problem?
Chris, whose mum was jailed after using capture, says it should be treated as an extension of the Post Office scandal.
I'm now sort of fighting on beyond the life of my mum and my dad. It would have been so nice to be able to tell them both, you know, we fixed it. And, you know, we didn't get that chance.
Those waiting now want an apology, but are also hoping history doesn't repeat itself for more victims of the Post Office. Adele Robinson, Sky News.
The allegations against Sean Diddy Combes could be just the tip of the iceberg. That is according to a lawyer representing one of the alleged victims. Sean Combes is currently in jail in New York awaiting trial over criminal charges of sex trafficking and racketeering, charges which he denies. Lisa Bloom, an American attorney, has told Sky News that she believes other celebrities will be implicated in the fallout from the case, saying there could be hundreds more who may be too afraid to come forward. Our arts and entertainment correspondent, Katie Spencer, has this report.
From a lifestyle of super yachts and aspirational wealth to this. Sean Diddy Combes now behind bars at this notorious Brooklyn detention centre as he awaits trial for sex trafficking and racketeering. Pleading not guilty to charges that, with the help of his employees, he coerced and abused for years, using blackmail and violence to silence his victims. And on top of the criminal case made against him, the hip-hop mogul also faces a mounting number of civil suits, more than 20 so far.
I look forward to taking Sean Combs' deposition in prison. For one thing, we know where he is. He can't say he's unavailable and out of town.
Lawyer Lisa Bloom is representing this woman, pictured next to Combs here, singer Dawn Richard, a member of two bands formed by the rapper.
She alleges that she was groped and grabbed by Sean Combs, that she witnessed him physically assaulting other women, that he restrained her, locked her into cars and other places, falsely imprisoned her. And it was just a really terrifying experience for her.
Combs' lawyers say Richard's allegations are an attempt to rewrite history. False claims, they say, manufactured by a singer who has an album out and who's trying to get a payday. They argue if she had such a negative experience, why did she return to work with him?
This is just the tip of the iceberg, what we're seeing right now. I think we're going to see a lot more accusers come forward. I have no doubt that there are hundreds more people who have these types of allegations of sexual assault, physical violence, threats, sex trafficking against Sean Combs and people associated with him, and that many are just too afraid to come forward, or that they signed NDAs and they think they have no rights.
So could other famous names be dragged into the mix? Court filings were recently made against rapper Jay-Z, who has vehemently denied allegations he raped a 13-year-old girl, allegedly with Sean Combs, after the MTV Music Awards in the year 2000. Calling for the lawsuit to be dismissed after inconsistencies emerged in her allegation.
People used to brag about going to Diddy parties, and a lot of people were there. Maybe some of them didn't know what was happening, but surely many of them did.
While both Combs and Jay-Z claim civil lawsuits are an attempt to extort money, the cases are continuing at a pace.
Right now, we are aggressively moving ahead with our cases. I think we might see more criminal charges to come.
From behind bars, the rapper, through his lawyers, says he is confident in his version of events and that he looks forward to proving his innocence in court. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview tonight, joined by Conservative Home's Deputy Editor, Henry Hill, and The Observer's Chief Leader Writer, Sonia Soda. Welcome. Great to see both of you. Certainly among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Metro about the murder of 10-year-old Sara Sharif and the judge's tribute to her bravery in the face of torture by her family. Back in just a moment.